Good morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be talking about the difference between a ScanNCut and a silhouette. So, first of all, don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching, just so that I can tell that the stream is working okay, and if I just check audio is working properly too. Yep, we have audio. So, today the differences between a ScanNCut and a silhouette. So I'm just going to wait for it to update because I don't think it's updating properly. Let me know if you're watching because I don't think it's giving me the right viewing figures. Yay! So this should be going live to... Hello Mom, there we go. According to my stream software, nobody's watching. Hey, there we go, we're up to 3. It's just a bit on the slow side. Okay, let me just check everything's okay on Facebook, just in case. Just because I know I just got a ding, which probably means there's something up. Okay. So, one of the questions that got asked in the group, or that we're starting to discuss, is the different ways the machines cut. So I thought it would be a good idea to do a bit of a comparison video, so that you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you buy one of these machines, whichever one you decide to go for. So, let me just check everything's okay on Facebook, and if it is, then I will carry on. It's a bit on the slow side this morning. Okay, we'll see how it goes. So, let's go over to the ScanNCut. So this is going to be a bit of a weird one because I'm going to be using one camera to do 2 machines that are in 2 different places. So, first of all, let's turn her on. So those of you that are familiar with the machine know that pretty much what I'm going to say for this morning, but I thought, given that it's going to be going up on YouTube and we might have some new people watching that are wondering which one to get, I would go through the ScanNCut too. So this is the SDX 1200. It's one of the higher end of the SDX machines, and let's take a guess, and I'm going to say it's Linda commenting as Planner Craft today, which probably means it's Deb. So, it has the auto blade, which is the black one. Has some come with the fabric blade too. And it is a truly auto blade, which does make a difference when we go across the silhouette later. So it literally will test your material before cutting. It will assume that everything that is on the mat is the same thickness. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are cutting. Morning, Deb. And what can you do with it? So you have built into your machine lots and lots of patterns. So that means that you don't necessarily have to use a computer to use your machine. What I would say is, if you are only using it as a standalone machine, you're going to be missing out on quite a few options that you can play with. But certainly when you first get started, you don't need to have it attached to a computer. You've got lots of drawing designs too, so it's not just strictly limited to cutting. And you have lots of different text that you can use to personalise the designs. And you have a few extra things like stencils and things. Now, each machine does have different designs, which is another thing to bear in mind. And then, with the ScanNCut, of course, you're going to want to go into the scan features. So, you have, and this is going to be a bit hard to see, but I don't want to move the camera because it's in the right place with the silhouette. You have direct cut, which is like your fussy cutting, where you want to just cut something out really quickly out of a piece of paper, for instance. You have ScanNCut data, which is where you can actually create cut files using the scanner, and it's going to trace for you. You can cut that out of anything and everything then. You have scan to USB, so you can actually use your ScanNCut as a flatbed scanner. Just it's going to roll through and off you go. And of course you can use it to link to Canvas at any point also. So I'm going to go back, and you have some other options for the SDX. So you've got the roll feeders, that's for the full SDX range. You have region emboss, which you need to buy the kit for, and that can work on both SDX and CM. And then you have My Collection. So if you have one of the pattern collections, they're going to come up in the My Collection section. So you just put those onto USB and you can access it through there. So, I'm going to go back home. And as I was saying, that you have an auto blade that is truly an auto blade. You also have the ability to purchase extra blades, so things like the vinyl auto blade is a really good investment for the machine. You have storage that is built in, and mine's usually pretty full and very useful, I have to say. Not everything will fit in there, but most things do. You of course have the roll feeder option if you want to as well. There's a pull-out tray at the back, so it's a good idea to extend that because that's going to help support your mat when it goes through to do a background scan. But it does actually have quite a short drop off, so if you're using something like the 12x24, it's usually helpful to have an assistant. So usually you'll find Ian's the other end catching the mat. So, quick mornings. Morning Deb, morning Carol, morning Linda, in case I didn't say. So that's a very, very quick overview of the ScanNCut. So how does the silhouette differ? Well, this is where it's going to go. We're going to go upside down for a bit, but I'm going to sort that, and here we go. Let me just move that across very slightly. Welcome to the silhouette. So, straight away what you're going to notice is there's no screen. And if I turn it on, power button's just at the side. You're going to see it has some little flashing arrows and then mat load. And it has a little Bluetooth. So, first thing, it doesn't use Wi-Fi like the ScanNCut does, it uses Bluetooth. So if your device is not enabled with the up-to-date Bluetooth, it's probably not going to be your option to go wireless. So you are going to need a fairly up-to-date computer to use that. You have the mat load and unload will be lit straight away. And now we can get into the kind of business end. So if I lift this up and push that back, we can see our tools. Now you have a dual carriage for starters, so that means that we can load it with a blade and a pen. It could be that you're loading two different blades if you're doing different cuts on the mat, things like that. Marvellous invention. So it's very, very handy. Also bear in mind that you want to set that up correctly in the software. And we have what Silhouette considers to be their auto blade installed. So if I unclip this, so that's an important note as well. So whereas with the ScanNCut you have a lever, you just have a little push and pull little tab there. And let's see if we can get the camera to focus. Come on. It'll get there eventually. So if I go back overhead, let's show you this blade a bit closer up. So let's see if I can get it without the glare, so you can see that at the moment it is currently set to 7. Yeah, 7. So there's a little red line just here, and that's going to show you the number that your blade is on. Okay. Now, whenever you start your project in your silhouette is going to go reset that, so it goes back to the beginning, and then it's going to go click, 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 and that number of clicks is the number that it's going to be on the blade. So you set it in the software, but the machine actually sets it on the blade, and that is supposedly what makes it the auto blade. There you go. So rather than having to go and physically change the blade, it does it for you, and that's the difference. Now, on the Cameo 4, you're going to find that most of your attachments have the little metal bit just at the back there, and that's so that it can identify what is in the machine. So, now let's just flick back to Silhouette, and we're going to pop that in, let it drop in place, then push until it snaps on that one so that it logs in. Is there another way of powering the forequill without using a battery pack? Yes, there is. You could use a USB extension lead. So basically it's like a multi-gang power extension. It has normal plugs, but it also has USB slots too. So I have a couple in my little blue. Let me see if I move those bits there, then I might just be able to get it in shot for you. So if I go over there, just past the CM in blue, that's mine. So it will look something like that, and it's got a little slidey hatch with a USB on it. Okay, now in terms of storage in the machine, we've got a little handy panel here, and if I go in there, we can see that we have another blade. So this is a manual one, so if we look at the bottom, you can see that it's got lots of numbers. So whereas your ScanNCut manual blade from your CM range, for example, will go to 12, this one goes all the way up to 30. So this is the Craft 2mm blade. So if you've got some chipboard that you want to get through, as in grey board, then that's going to be the blade that you're going to want to use. But I've also used it for some other bits and pieces too. It's quite handy for using for bitter card, for instance, where you've got a bit more of a crunch to get through. The blade itself, if I extend it down, it's actually quite scary, this one. So let's see if I can get that against the white just there. Come on, focus, there we go. So it's quite a big blade by comparison to something like the auto blade in the ScanNCut. But it does have a lot of welly. So, first of the points of the differences between them is that if you have something that is a bit more specialist, or that you'll need to cut in a certain way, chances are the Silhouette is going to handle it better, because the software itself actually recreates the path rather than the machine. So, whereas the ScanNCut will blindly follow an SVG, whichever way it goes, the Silhouette's a bit more clever about it and actually thinks, well, what am I cutting? So you set the material actually in the software, and I'll be showing you that. Whereas the ScanNCut doesn't know what's on the mat really. If I pull out this tray here, and you're going to pull it out right out to its extent. So let's just see if I can just get that in. There we go. This is your roll feeder, so it's already built in, it's not a separate purchase. You're going to push that bit back like so. This arm comes up here, and then this arm over here adjusts to where your roll is. So you'll see that there's some little guides here as to the width of your roll. So if you're working with a 12-inch roll, chances are it's going to be about there. If you're working with something that's more 9 inches, it's going to come into there. And that is basically just going to hold your roll as the machine's taking it through with the rollers. So there's no actual motor in this bit, it's just literally just to support that roll. Can you still use something like canvas to do your designs for the Silhouette? You actually have to use something like canvas to do designs for the Silhouette. So whereas with ScanNCut, if you don't want to get involved in doing the design side, you can just use the design as is. Silhouettes you tend to get a little bit more. Right, come here. It gets there eventually, you just have to clunk. Okay, so I'm going to push that back in. And to go with a roll feeder, out the back the other side, there is actually a trimmer. So that if you want to just trim off the roll, you can do. Or what it will default to is it will actually stick all the media that is cut back through the front, and you can just roll it up onto your roll. So if you've done lots of names and things, you can just pull out one individual bit at a time, cut it off, read it, apply it, next bit, and so forth. You have rollers on here, and these are really clever too. So if just lower that lever, you're going to see that that roller bar raises, and what that means is we can actually adjust where our rollers go. So we know if we're doing like sort of quickie glue pen, for instance, rather than using the glue pen function on the ScanNCut, we can actually adapt where these rollers go and save our machine. Likewise, we have our roller that adjusts from the end. So this means that you can use an A4 cutting mat, you can use a 12x12, or you've got longer. But you can also, with the silhouette, cut with no mat at all. So that's where this is really going to come in handy. So this first marker is for your A4 with no cutting mat. So if you want to do something like a printed sheet of die cuts, where you want to keep the shapes in the card, then you can actually do that on your silhouette, no mat needed. It'll actually do your kiss cutting for you. So whereas the ScanNCut can only do a half cut, kiss cut is where it cuts all the way through, but it leaves like little notches. So that's very useful. I was using that the other day to do some tags so that we can fill them in as orders. And same when you're using the roll feeder, you're going to adjust that roller to match your roll feeder. So when you're done, just slide it back over to the right, let go of the lock, and I managed to get it straight in there. It does click in. When you're happy, just raise the lever and you're good to go. Now let's talk about mats. So those of you that are familiar with the ScanNCut are familiar with the Artistics mats, and let's see if I can zoom out a bit temporarily, because they are very big by comparison to the machine. Okay, so let's show you this silhouette mat. So this is the original silhouette mat. This is what we get with the machine, and the difference in the mat size. So it literally comes up to here, so more or less just under that arrow, and up to that square there. It's a bit hard to see when it's transparent, so hence I'm kind of explaining it. And width wise, it comes to about that much outside the cut area. So it's a lot less plastic, and you can use alternative makes of mats, including Artistics. They do actually do them for the silhouette too, but you have a lot more choice with regards to where you can get your mat from. You also have a lot of choice in terms of the amount of stick that you want on your mat. So if you need a really heavy stick or strong tack for your mat, you can get that quite easily for your silhouette, and it's going to stay nice and sticky. So this mat is now about a year old and it's still going. But like I said, even if you find that you don't have a mat available, you can still cut your cameo. What you do is you either use that kiss cut function in terms of keeping the shapes in the mat and cutting all the way through, or use a half cut. So if you're doing things like vinyl, sticker paper, or the rest of it, you do not need to use a mat. And I think that's really cool that you don't have to do that. So, Carol asked the question about canvas versus silhouette. So I thought I would be good and I would actually show both side by side. So let's open canvas first of all and find my display button. There we go. So welcome to canvas. You can see that you've got a whole range of shapes down this left hand side that you can play with. Fantastic. Nice and easy to do simple tasks, like if you want to do a shaped card, if you want to create your own envelopes, you've got a nice easy option just there that you can turn into an envelope, and so on and so forth. You've also got your pre-made borders. You've got words that are pre-designed, and then you then have your additional functions that are going to pop up underneath. So I've got the paper piercing kit, for instance, so that's the shapes that come with that. And I have the vinyl auto blade, so that's the designs that come with that. And there's some very nice designs in there that, you know, I tend to end up forgetting I have, to be perfectly honest. So I have used some of them, like the diamond one's quite a popular one for me to do. And you of course have your option to do your text using all of the fonts that are in your computer up to a certain point. It prefers to type fonts to open type fonts. So if a font isn't showing up, chances are it's an open type font and it just can't quite get a read on it. So if there's a true type option, install that as well, and that will kind of give you belt and braces. We can import an SVG, and this is again is important to know because when it comes to silhouette it's a bit different. So you can see we've got all our SVGs that can be easy to select. We've got image tracing, so that we can do an image trace, and if I go in there it's going to say, do you want to do an image in the computer or an image that's been scanned by the machine, because we can send from our SDX or from the CM to canvas and we can trace in there. Again, important to note. I do have the enhanced image tracing, but that comes up when we kind of step into the image tracing a bit more. And of course we have a path tool so that we can actually draw directly into canvas, so that we can do a path. And we have a pencil tool so we can just draw as if we're writing. Again, if you have a graphics tablet, that could be that you are actually writing directly into canvas if you want to. And in terms of your operations, you're pretty limited in the software. You have the option to cut, draw, or in my case pierce, because I've got the paper piercing kit. So most of the time it's going to be nice and simple, cut or draw. Your line width actually doesn't make any difference to what you're actually doing when you come to cut it out, but that's okay. Here's for kind of your visual reference, something to bear in mind. And you can basically fill a whole mat with one shape. Now, there's a reason why I'm showing you that too, because it does it slightly differently in silhouette. And in terms of your artboard, you have a pretty basic choice of 12 by 12 or 12 by 24 and a custom size for tiling, and that gets enabled with the vinyl auto blade. So if you want to do something larger than the mat, it's usually when you would be using tiling. Okay. And of course we can change between inches and millimeters, we can change the view of the mat if we want to. The one thing that I will point out that Canvas does better than the basic version of the Silhouette software is it does have the ability to see your layers. Now, you're going to find that when we hop over to Silhouette Studio, there we go, it's going to be a bit different. So I actually have the business edition, but I've taken it through to doing I'm just suddenly thinking, that is working, isn't it? Let me just double check. Just double check. That's weird. It says I have a message, but it doesn't come up on there. Weird. Okay. So, as I said, I have the business edition, but I've set it up so that it looks the same as the basic. So this is what you get when you first install your machine. You will be told to install this software, and that is what's going to work your machine. So, if we go into our shape tools, you can see we haven't got as many shapes to play with straight off the bat as what we have with ScanNCut. We have different ways of drawing paths though, and we can still edit our nodes. We can still draw with a pencil, and we can still use text, and it's still going to use all the fonts that are in your computer, and if not, a few more than what you'll find with your ScanNCut. It doesn't mind open type fonts. This is a really useful function that is missing from Canvas, and that's draw a note. So you can actually add notes to your projects. It won't cut, obviously, it is just there as a note. It's really handy if you are doing something that you want to add notes to. Say, for instance, if you are going to sell your files. And you have an eraser tool. Again, this is another useful one. So you're literally going to be able to erase sections of a shape. And we have our little eyedropper tools and other things. But when you first kind of come into the software, one of the first things you are going to want to do is we're going to want to go to the store. So when you first buy your machine, let me just make that bigger, you get a certain amount to actually spend on designs. So it is worth quickly flicking into the design store, see if there's anything you like, and that's going to get added to your library. So there are hundreds if not thousands of designs and fonts and papers for you to look at and decide which ones you want. So I thought it was a good idea to just show those to you, because obviously when we have the ScanNCut, we end up going to other places for those kind of things. So whether that's design bundles or Creative Fabrica, you know, yes, okay, you have those projects when you first start up Canvas, but there aren't as many as what we are going to get going through the Silhouette Design Store, for instance. So I'm going to go back to Studio. So that's access just up here, and we can go straight to the store. We also have two ways of getting to the library. So if we go to the library, we can see things that we've already imported. And if we go to all files, we can see things that came with the machine. So when you first buy the machine, you also get a certain amount that's put in your library. That's kind of a starting point. There's also a weekly freebie on the Silhouette Design Store, so it's worth downloading those, because each time you do, you get loyalty points, which is cool. And then your loyalty points you can use towards more free designs. So there's lots of freebies to be had. I don't think it's all about paying out for extra designs. And let's think if I put something on the mat. So let's go for a book. So if we go down this way, we can actually pull in our library this way, and we can click and drag that onto our mat. So I want my book. There we go. So let's take the library back out of the way. And we have our design. Now, going over to our page setup. So remember how I was saying that in Canvas we only have the option of 12 by 12 and 12 by 24. This is where it's going to get a bit more in depth. So first of all, it's going to automatically find your machine. So at the moment my machine's connected via Bluetooth, and I think it's also got the cable. If we go into cutting mat, we can tell it which cutting mat we are using. So with an auto, it's also automatically going to go to a 12x12 mat. That's fine. You've got none. So if you're using any media where you are not using a mat, so that could be the roll feeder, it could be a piece of vinyl that you're kiss cutting, it could be a piece of card that you are kiss cutting. You then have your different mats. So we have the Cameo 30.5 by 30.5, which is the 12x12. You have the 12x24 Cameo. Then you've got the option to use a portrait mat, the stamp mat, and the PicScan Cameo mat. So PicScan is a bit like a scanner in that it's going to show you where your materials are on your mat. So if you think about the background scan function on the ScanNCut, it's going to kind of pick up from there. It's not going to be able to do things like the fussy cutting overly well. But it's good for doing like laying out. You then independently choose your media size. So if I go into that, you can see that it's going to give you the option to fill the mat, but also if you are working with A4, for instance. So if you're doing print to cut, so I can say I'm going to do A4, and let's just shrink that mat back down. And you can set it as a custom if you want to as well, and if you want to set it to a landscape, you can do. The constrained media to cutting a mat is useful if like you've got an A3 and you're kind of like, I'm just going to stick on a 12x12 because I'm only using the top part of it, sort of thing. And then we have show print border. So I can see straight away that if I was to print my stag, he's going to be out of the range of the printer. I'm going to click on him so that we can get our little resizing function. And we can scale him down and put him in the middle. Now, I'm going to kind of very quickly jump onto the grid. So we've got the same kind of snapping, but we can also change the size of our grid, which is really funky to play with and really useful. We can snap to our grid as well, which you can also do in Canvas, but obviously with Canvas you've kind of got the inch marks and the half marks. Registration marks of when you're doing print to cut. Okay, and that's going to literally just plonk those in place. It is going to consider where your print border is, but also in terms of where the scanner is on the Cameo. So it does scan, but it's in a really limited capacity. So one of the things I prefer the Cameo for is print to cut, because it does these registration marks, and then when you load in your mat, it's going to read them and it's going to cut exactly where you tell it to, which at the end of the day is what you want. Whereas if you're doing fussy cutting with a ScanNCut, sometimes it can be that little bit off, so that you get like a white edge to one side. You're not going to have that issue with the Cameo as much. So, worth looking at. You can invert it if you want to, if you're doing, something where you need to flip it. So, like some types of vinyl, not all. And yeah, so far so good. Now, in the basic, what can't you do? You can't import an SVG. So if I go to File, Library, and Import to Library, it's going to come up with Finder as normal, but you're going to see all the grey SVGs are ones that you can't import. So you can bring in JPEGs by all means, and you can use image tracing, and you can go from there. But you can't import an SVG. To do that, you do need to upgrade the software. And of course, you can do all your designs within Silhouette. So I do prefer the Silhouette software to Canvas. There's just more that you can do. So you've got your fill colours, but you can really get involved into your design work with it. You've got image effects that you can add on. So if you're doing print to cut, if you want to put drop shadow on something, you can put drop shadow on something. You're going to find that your text controls are pretty similar to what Canvas can do, but you do have the added benefit of kerning, which is always good. Your reline and your transform again are going to be pretty identical. Replicate is, it's like duplicate on steroids. So you are going to be able to do multiple copies. You can fill a page in the same way as what you can in Canvas, but what you can actually do is get a lot more involved with numbers of copies, so that you can actually do a grid. So if you're doing like a load of business cards, for instance, you do one business card, you get it to replicate all your hard work for you. We can mirror in multiple directions. We can rotate copies as well, so if you want to create a frame nice and easily, you can use your rotate copies to do that. And of course we have all our calculations. So your weld is exactly what it says it is. Subtract is the same. Subtract all, so that it basically flattens, is the same as remove overlap in Canvas. Intersect, so it only keeps the area where two shapes overlap. Again, that's one that you don't tend to have in Canvas, but is useful. Divide is exactly the same as in Canvas, but you also have crop, which is cool. And unlike Canvas, you have the option to do compound paths. So that's where you find that you can have shapes that you can weld but aren't overlapping and things like that. And you can detach outlines, so that basically if you want to have a shape that prints with a certain outline, you can have it a separate cut line as well, which can be useful. So for instance, one of the projects I was doing the other day, I extended the stroke past the cut line so that I had a nice black edge rather than having a white edge. We have a whole panel for offset, and you can see it's pretty much the same as what you'll get in Canvas. Now, this is where it starts to get a bit more funky. So, if you want to do more complex projects, and this is one of the things you're going to find with the Silhouette software as you go up through the ranks, it's going to help you to kind of grow as a designer. So, you have the ability to do pop-ups. So if you want to do a pop-up card where something pops up, it's going to help you do that. If you want to do stippling, for instance. Now stippling you're not going to be able to do with your Cameo 4, but you can do it with the Curio. So that's where that comes from. Embossing, get the tools, off you go. Sketching, again, drawing. So if I pop back overhead for a moment, just so I can see if there's any questions. What I will show you is if we go in our little box tricks here. So you'll be familiar with this one. So this is the ScanNCut universal pen holder. But I also have the same for Silhouette. So it's still from 3D Fun Prints. So you can do that, but otherwise you have the Silhouette pen holder. So it's a little bit different in terms of the brother one. So you're going to get these little inserts that kind of unscrew and fit in, and that's going to change the barrel width of your holder. It has a little cap at the other end that we can take off, and then off we go. I'll show you the difference on here. This one's going to be pretty similar to the ScanNCut one. So we still have the guide. It's a little bit more of a pull to get the guide out for this one. You can tell it's a brand new one as well. So you can still screw it to tighten it up and so on and so forth. And there we go. What I will say is what you will find is things like the fill work better on the silhouette. So if you're filling a shape and you're getting like a fuzzy line, you don't tend to get that so much with a silhouette. Like I said, it kind of adapts to what you're doing a bit more. Okay, so let's say you've done your design and we go to send. I'm going to think about it. Now this is where a silhouette is going to really adapt with you. So if you're beginning right at the start of your silhouette journey and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, start simple. And first of all, you're going to select your material. So at the moment it can see what blade I have in, so that's why you've got these little exclamation marks on certain things, because it's going, well, you wouldn't use that blade to cut that. So straight away say, hello, change blade. But let's say we were just going to put it onto plain old cardstock. So we put it through our printer and off we go. You're going to see that then it's going to come up with some different actions, so we can tell it to go auto, at which point it's just going to cut it. But it can score, it can sketch. Stipple is just for the curio, and it can pop out cut. So that pop out cut is that kiss cutting that I was on about, where it's going to hold your shape into your card. So if you want to do that and then pass it to somebody else, that's what you do, pop out cut. But for the most part, when you're beginning, you're going to stick to the auto. It's detected the auto blade. Oh, there you go. Silly Natty didn't change the screen back. I'm sorry. So let me do that again. So we're going to go to send and choose your material. So that's where I was on about with the exclamation marks. So it's saying the blade that's currently in the machine can't cut that. It's fine. We're going to choose plain cardstock. And then we have the auto blade detected. If we go into the drop down, we can change what is in there to the manual blade, for instance. And likewise, if I take out the blade and change it for something else. So let's take out that blade and let's just put in the craft blade. For starters, it goes in the other folder. There we go. And because we've changed our blade, we're going to want to change to a different material. So let's go for balsa. And if it's good, let's go back out and then back into it. Come on, yeah, I know it's there. I can see it's there. Oh, see that? Heat's getting to me. So, carriage 2, because I've loaded it in there, we can set that to balsa wood. There we go. So, you can see that there's the craft blade. Good to go. And you're going to see that you've got different coloured lines. So if we look back at our cut here, you can see it's got this red line around the outside. So that means it's going to try and cut it with carriage 1, which obviously isn't going to work. So what you're going to want to do is just change it out to carriage 2, just by changing the colour of the outline. It's a really funky way of doing it. Now, with the auto blade, if I go back to the auto blade, so let's put that in there for now. let's go back to the altar blade. I'm going to shrink up carriage 2 for the moment. And let's go back to cardstock. There we go. If I set this dial here, and I can say, okay, I want it to go to 7. When I tell it to go, it's going to do that reset and then clunk to the right place. With carriage 2, because we've got that manual blade in, we have to tell the software what we've set that blade to, and that needs to match what's on the actual blade. So it's not going to be clever enough to know if you basically tell it pockets in here, it's not going to work out what that blade's doing for you. So that's the difference between the manual blade and the auto blade. Force. So with your ScanNCut, you've got pressure that you're used to that is -9 to +12, I think. I never get up that far. And most of the time, you're going to be down right at the bottom end of the scale. Now, what I will say is with silhouette, it works slightly different. And you can see pretty much what I tend to stick to in terms of my force and speed. So my force is at 20, but it goes up to 33. It's a really random number. So let's just set that to be 20. The speed is currently at 4, but I can actually make it go all the way up to 30. So I don't mind it being a bit slower. There's sometimes when I'll make it go a bit faster, but 9 times out of 10 I don't mind it being slow. And that's kind of your simple settings. Now down the bottom of the screen here, I hope you can see that there's 4 little arrows. And that's how you can position the cutting head. So this is the other big difference with the Cameo to the ScanNCut. So whereas with the ScanNCut, you have to position it on screen and that's where it goes, end of. With the Cameo, although this is set up to go up here, if I accidentally put it on the map over here, all I have to do is use my 4 arrows, but there's also 4 arrows on the machine itself, to actually move that cutting head to where I need it. So that is a really funky way of working too. And that is kind of your real quick overview of basic, and that's where you're going to start. When you start to get a bit more involved, you're going to be able to do things like having multiple lines. So if you've got a pattern that has a score line, a perforation, a full cut, a half cut, some drawing, then what you can do is you can actually have all of those assigned different line colours down here, and you can actually set each colour up with a tool and settings, and you can either type to do it all at once, or you can turn them on and off as to which tools are loaded. So if you have something where you need more than 2 tools, for instance, because you've only got a dual carriage, then you can do 2 at a time. Or if it's something like where you've got the auto blade in, you can get the auto blade to do a certain setting, so say 7 to get all the way through the guard, and then it could score at 2, and it will go and just change that setting, so going back to resetting and then clunk clunk to get to the 2. And it is a clunk clunk. So that is the other big difference between the 2 machines, is the volume. So if I try and have them both going at once, you soon know which one's making the most noise. So it is a before 9 o'clock option. I don't tend to cut after 9 with it. And you've got things like fill, so you can set it by fill as well. So you don't have to do it by stroke. You can do it by the colour that it is, which is also useful if you're doing like multiple colours of cardstock. So you can say all the brown items I'm going to cut then I'm going to cut all the beige items, so on and so forth. So it's really handy way. It's kind of taking your cutting ability from your ScanNCut and taking it one step further. So if we go down here, you can see that we've got the option to extend past our cutting point, as well as lots of other options. So if you're doing foam, for instance, and you're cutting a star, what it'll actually do is it actually does like a loop. So let's see if we can do that actually. Let's go back to design. Let's take those registration marks out of the way because we don't need them. So I can turn them off. Simple. And if I don't want that on the mat, I can just move that off there. Let's go for polygon. I'm going to draw it. Now this is where we're going to have things like the shape options, so I can say how many sides I want. So let's go for an 8. We can resize it. Okay. Now, if we're going to cut that from foam, let's see if it's going to behave and show it for you. So I'm going to go to send. I'm going to go back to simple. And craft foam. It's not going to show it. Just annoy me. It's not going to show it. So basically, what it'll do is it'll come down here. It'll loop. So that instead of pulling on the corners, it actually does a loop to get the blade in the right place, so that your cut shape is actually pretty perfect. So I did some stars that you can find on the Craft Store Direct blog, or the Graph Tech blog rather, and you can see how it cuts those. So just doing those loops, little things like that, is what the silhouette's really good for. So where you're doing something that's a little bit more complicated, where you're not quite getting the results that you want, you're just going to cut. Normally the silhouette can go, well, actually, I know how to do that. So, as I said, I have the business edition. So what's the difference? So if I delete this for now, and let's put that on that, and I'm going to put another shape. This one, basic shape, nothing too involved. When we get into 3D stuff, it's like a whole different kettle of fish. Hairdryer, really random, but it's a one colour design, which is what I want. Come on. It's having a wobbly. Come on. I don't want those, thank you. I want the hairdryer. Come on. Let me get to it. It's gonna be annoying. Come on. Don't crash on me. Please don't crash on me. You probably will, won't you? Yeah. Okay. So, just in case it does, I can actually go to viewing and I can show you the different options. So, if I go to designer, and now when we go to import to library, I'm going to ignore what's on the map because it's just being annoying. You're going to see all those greyed out SVGs are now active. So that's just by going up to designer. But what we can't do at this point is export to SVG, which is why most people will go up to the business edition. You have the designer edition plus, which gives you a few extra features, but not much. So really, to my mind, you either go for the designer or you go for the business. Designer enables you to import SVGs and do some other bits and pieces. So, like layers. So, if I go, let's just check that when I'm saying that, yeah. Always worth double checking. Whereas Business Edition is going to give you that option to export to SVG, but it's also going to give you some other options. So, remember how I was saying about filling the mat? We can actually go one step further when we've got the Business Edition in terms of actually filling our role even. So basically what you would do is set it so that you have no mat. Then you can choose your media layer as much as you want. So although you'll actually slide that up and it will say about 60 centimetres, you can actually go way further. So I actually cut something that was nearly 3 metres long the other day using the roll feeder just because I needed the number of copies. So, going back to copies, all I did was I set up rows and columns for how many I wanted. So if you've got one of something and you want to go, right, okay, I need 14 of them. If you can fit 2 columns in, you're going to say 2 there and you're going to put 7 in your rows. And off you go. Really easy. It does it for you. If you want to do nesting shapes, so if you are creating something where you want to cut out the centre and save you waste, then you can use nesting to do that for you. It saves you doing it. And you also have the same tiling options, but without having to go and buy a separate blade. But obviously, Business Edition software is about, I think it's just shy of £100 on top. So it is a considered purchase, but when you bear in mind that the ScanNCut link, when it first came out, to connect it to Illustrator alone was heading up to that mark when it first came out. It's not that bad for an investment, because once you've paid for that £99, say, that's it. That's all you pay for. There's no monthly fee, there is no upgrade fee. It's the same software that will just continually update. And it tends to update roughly about every month or 2. It is suitable for both Mac and PC, obviously, because I'm on a Mac. And that's a good point. You know, both machines will quite happily work with a Mac. So it doesn't really have a decision to make there in terms of once upon a time not everything would work with a Mac. But they do, and I believe the Cricut does too. Because I have Design Studio for Cricut as well. So, yeah, that's going to be your main differences. You're going to have things like your rhinestones that you're going to be able to do without having to buy a separate kit. Just basically you need to just go and buy the felt for your actual transfer. And if you really want to get into that, there's Rhinestone World on YouTube that is really good as kind of a first beginner step into how to do that without having a kit to kind of guide you, so that you know what you're getting. And of course all the elements of the lower ones you'll find in Business, so you're going to be able to do really funky things like creating fonts in the Business Edition, which is really cool. So if you want to create your own fonts from your own handwriting, you're going to see that it has a sheet that you're going to be able to do, and you can say A4, so it's not just Americanized, so you can do it A4, and then you can either take a photo or scan it back in. So in my case I'd end up sending it back with ScanNCut. So hence it's saying no scanner found, because basically I would just have to do that through a JPEG and it's going to treat it like a photo anyway. But if you have a separate flatbed scanner, or if you've got a multi-function machine, you should find that that's going to pop up there. I just don't have one attached at the moment. So there you go. That is a really brief overview of the differences. So the software can do so much that I haven't shown you. So much. It's one of those ones where it's good to have a project so that you can see what it can and what it can't do. To be honest, I haven't found much that it can't do. In terms of like-for-like comparison, probably the closest software to it is ScanNCut a lot. At which point you'll find that it is pretty similar in terms of what it offers. Likewise, if you want to use your Silhouette machine with ScanNCut a lot instead of using the Silhouette software, that's fine too. You can do that. So if you've already invested in ScanNCut a lot, you don't have to worry about needing to upgrade Silhouette Studio to be able to benefit from it. So let me just go back overhead just so I can check for comments. You can't see the bottom of the screen. Yeah, I did think it was going to be a bit close. So basically, if I grab my mat, I'm going to take the backing plate just so that I can show you what I mean in terms of these sort of small buttons. So, let me load my mat. Now, you're going to load it so that the mat goes up to your line here. Tap up on the little arrow key. Can we have a lesson on pan pastels when you get time, please? Yeah. How about a general lesson on pastels? Because there's lots that you can do with pastels. It's a long time since I've kind of got that way inclined because hands don't help. So we can see that we have our 4 arrow keys, and these are the same that are in the software. So we can actually manually position on the mat and go, okay, I can go there if I want to. I can send it across like so, and it can cut from that point. So if you've got lots of different things on the mat, you can just go, actually I don't need to do a background scan, I can just move that cutting head. And so long as you can see that blade holder is within that corner, so you want to be able to see the corner kind of about there-ish. So you can go for it and start cutting. So it's cool. It's cool and I like it. And likewise. Yeah, so if you are interested in doing a drawing class, then do let me know. Just so it's not Carol on her own. So I will take you right from basic pencil techniques to full-on drawing. The other thing to mention with Silhouette, although I said about like the software doesn't need you to buy kits, there are kits if you want something to actually get you started. So there's things like screen printing. So if I go back up ahead. So with the screen printing kit you get an actual wooden frame. You get 3 pieces of screen printed fabric that you then basically cut the HTV on your Silhouette. You can apply it onto your fabric and then you've got a squeegee and black paint actually in the kit to get you started. Other kits that I've done, because I've done a few now, the sticker doming kit, that's a really good one because it gets you started with resin. So I did a video on that if you go back a little while ago. So that was all done with the Silhouette. So using the registration marks the same way in the software, it's basically like printable vinyl to get you started. So works really well with the laser, which is good. And because not all of them do. So it is a case of just testing it out and seeing where you go from there. You don't tend to have the kind of card activation card designs in terms of separate kits to buy, but you do get ones that come with the setup, like the starter pack. So that's the advent calendar one, and then that downloads like all your cut files for your advent calendar, as well as it gives you the cut files for the boxes, even though you get the boxes made in the kit. So if you want to make a different set of boxes later on, then in actual fact you've got the cut file, which I think is a really good idea. So my advent calendar might get a facelift this year, you never know. Trying to think which one that is. So with one of the other kits you get 10 exclusive designs, and it's done that way, and then it's like, oh, which one's which? So you can see that you kind of have a little bundle of those. Whereas with your ScanNCut, you're going to tend to have, trying to do this off screen so I don't give any codes away. You tend to have a little paper fold over one. So if you've got something like this, that's what they are. So you've got the 125 design one, the enhanced image tracing comes as one, the vinyl water blade activation is one, paper piercing is one, and the ScanNCut link is also a paper card, which is really weird. So yeah, that one has an activation too, so I can't show you that one. But in terms of software, the Silhouette software is really capable. Even though my computer's like, you've got Canvas open and you're streaming, you can't expect me to use Silhouette as well. So yeah. Any questions? Because if you want to ask me questions, feel free. Again, it's one of those where doing it with a project in use, you can kind of see how it cuts different. So what I will do is, it'll either be Friday or next week, I'll actually create a project in both so that you can see how they actually cut different as well. Because I think that's really useful to see, just in terms of even the cut finish, so that you can kind of compare like for like, because it's not something that you tend to see in most retailers. It's very hard to, find somewhere where you can have a Cricut, a Silhouette and a ScanNCut side by side. It's a little bit better now that we've got a few different retailers for the ScanNCut, but yeah, it is a bit of a trek to try and see them side by side, so I don't mind kind of doing that. Any questions or anything you'd like to see? So as I said, it does actually have a little trimmer out the back as well. So if you just want it to just trim where it finishes, you can do that. And you can get spare blades for that as well. So it's not a case of eventually it will blunt and you can't change it. You can get the spare blades to pop in. Same as what you can with the roll feeder for the ScanNCut. The main difference that you're going to find with the ScanNCut roll feeder is it actually has a header strip for your roll, so that it kind of feeds in on that header strip to get it started, which is a cool idea in some ways, because obviously that's how it's going to handle the registration issue. But yeah, it's good to just be able to just stick the roll in the Cameo and off you go without any faff. Would anybody else be interested in that pan pastel lesson, or pastels as a general lesson? So That's okay, Deb. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what I'm here for. If you do have any further questions, if you want to pop them onto a message, so you can either contact the Plannercraft page or you can pop it into the ScanNCut and Papercraft group on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, you can either drop it as a comment on the video, or if you want to message me privately, I think you can do that on YouTube through the community, but I don't know for certain. Never tried it. You can also get in touch with me on Instagram as well. So I tend to respond quite quickly on Insta. So thank you, Linda. Yeah, it's quite a fun one to kind of try and do between the two. But yes, I will put up a project that we can do on both, I think, just so you can see the differences, as well as some other links and things. So if you are interested in a bit more on the silhouette, let me know and I will try and do a bit more work with it on screen, because it tends to be something that I work on pretty much in private at the moment, because the Silhouette DT is currently on hold until probably about a month or two. So it doesn't tend to get much of a public outing at the moment, apart from when I put it up on Insta. So take care, and I'll go and put some links up for you to have a look at. Have fun, and I will be back on Pretty Gets Gritty on Thursday, but I'll be doing a bit more for the Technique journal, and that's going to be using some new dies, so definitely going to be wanting to join in for that one. So if you love background dies or texture dies, hint hint, you are going to want to watch that one. Take care and bye.